Welcome into the Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner at Memorial Stadium, where we saw another field rushing, just as many bodies as I have ever seen, Joey, on the Memorial Stadium turf after that one, as Illinois fans turned the centennial celebration of Memorial Stadium into the biggest win of the Brett Bielema era. We can answer that question later, but 21-7 Illinois defeats number 24 Michigan. The Illini will raise in the rankings after this big victory on national television, Joey, wearing these red Grange jerseys. Illinois clinches bowl eligibility, which just feels like a footnote in all of this. But this had so much buildup to potentially be a great moment for the program. And let's be honest, Illinois never trailed, and I thought they dominated this game, and they looked like the better team. So what a big moment, Joey. What stood out to you, or what does this moment mean, do you think, for the Illini?
First of all, I'm with you. Like, I did think they dominated this game. Even at half, it was 13-7, and it felt like it should have been 19. I know someone will ask about the fourth down call. We'll get into that later, but there wasn't a point really where you thought, I don't know about this. Illinois just played really well in the trenches, something we hadn't seen consistently done for both sides of the ball all season. I guess maybe the only point was Michigan got the ball to start the third, and you thought if they scored there, then things get really interesting, and we'll see how they bounce out of this. But the defense buckled down, and they gave – it's interesting. I was thinking about this on our way up here. After the Kansas game, and I still think we were right, like the moment after that game did matter to have a ranked win. It just didn't age well. This game, we talked about it on Thursday. The thought was, you'd heard, hey, is Illinois real? Is Illinois real? Their FPI was in the 50s, according to ESPN, and the resume just didn't have that headliner. So the takeaway is, they get that headliner and another moment. They had another moment at Memorial Stadium. You can see it's happening here, right? You can see this build is starting to go, and I understand it's not always linear, and it wasn't linear from 2022 to now. But you're seeing the build happen, and I think people are bought in. Fans are bought into what Illinois is doing, and it kind of rehashes the column that you and I had talked about in 2022. These players are all in on Bielema. They are following this dude every single place he says to go, and then you're starting to see moments happen for a program that's just lacked them for a decade and more.
Yeah, let's be honest. These 3 wins over AP top 25 opponents, I don't know if any of them are going to age as top 25 type teams, but in the moment, they were top 25 teams. Kansas obviously has not played well since then, but that was a nice win for Illinois. I still think winning at Nebraska is a big win for this team, even though they got smoked by an Indiana team that might be really, really good. But Michigan, listen, they're not the Michigan of the last couple years, but you beat all these teams, Joey. These are all teams that are decent to good teams, and Illinois beat all of them. And what I think stood out to me the most is this wasn't fluky. Illinois dominated this game. They dominated in the trenches against Michigan, a Michigan team that has
that was their strength. That was their strength. That was the biggest question coming into the year or to the game was the trenches, and they dominated them. Sorry to cut you off, but goodness gracious, that's huge.
If you would have told me before the game, Illinois passes for 80 yards and they win 21-7, I'd be like, no freaking way. They would have lost
2021. I'm seeing 2021 Wisconsin, right? If you tell me that.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh man, that defense must be awesome. The offensive line must have had a bad day. Luke must have had his worst game. Luke Altmyer played pretty well, but he didn't have to play savior in this one because your offensive line, I thought, had its best game of the year. Yes, you get 36 yards in a Tanner Arkin fake punt that we'll talk about. You get 48 yards from Luke Altmyer running. But Josh McCray had 50 yards rushing. Aiden Woffrey had 54 yards rushing. You ran for 187 yards against Michigan, which is by far the most they have given up this season. And then the defense, Joey, we will break it down, but you dominated there in the trenches, only allowing 3 yards per carry, getting 5 sacks in this game, 2.5 from Gabe Akis, 2 from T-Raw Edwards. The way you won this one felt different than the other ones, and it felt like, oh, that's Brett Bielema ball. This was a Bielema type victory. But at the end of it, you're 6-1 with 3 AP top 25 wins. And you had that field rushing, and you had this huge buildup with everything that was happening around this game. And you're looking in the corner of the end zone, Joey, over the last couple minutes. And who's there? Just taking it all in. Illinois Athletic Director Josh Whitman. And think of all the games we watched him in the corner of that end zone, whether it was Lovie Smith or whether it was disappointing losses for Brett Bielema. And maybe we saw a lot of steal of the benches because people didn't stick around and see that. To have these moments like this not only helps you in recruiting, but it helps you with this fan base that will be bought in. And why wouldn't you be bought in on this program right now? But they get to the stadium and it makes this place what Josh Whitman has wanted to be for so long, which is sold out, which is top 25 type football program. And if you got that, your athletic department's going to go skyward because they've needed this for so long.
Brett Bielema mentioned that. He keeps saying, like, hey, we have to capitalize on these. After Kansas, you've got to capitalize on this. After Nebraska, you've got to capitalize on this. So I'm like, what does that look like? He said it again today, and he said it's recruiting. And he said, hey, you got to have the Kentucky Derby. You've got to have the horses. And obviously they have some really big-time recruits on campus. And then he said what you're saying, Jeremy, football makes it go. Everything goes. Like, I understand everyone is really excited. I'm looking at the State Farm Center right now. There's a lot of excitement there. And it's a huge deal. I'm not at all trying to minimize basketball, but football, from a financial standpoint, from everything that it's built into, football makes athletic departments go and be funded. Life gets easier when you've got people coming to football games. You've got a football team winning those games. And
especially when revenue sharing comes in. You can't fit 60,000 into one basketball game. You fit 60,000 and buying all those concessions and buying the parking and buying the apparel. That revenue sharing gets a little bit easier to pay for.
Yeah, it sure does. And you're right. Like, I do wonder, I know, not to spoil your story, and I don't know what Josh Whitman said to you. I know you caught up with Josh briefly after Brett Bielema's presser, but what do you think he thought when that was going on? Like, when that –
Stay tuned.
Sure, that's right. But, I mean, this not only professionally does Josh Whitman need football to go, and he needs Brett Bielema to have football go, Josh has invested his heck in this thing. Like, he played here. This is his baby. And to see, as you mentioned, like, you're not seeing the steel of bleachers. It's people clad in orange and blue watching your
rushing
team
down that steel of bleachers.
Yeah, like, finally seeing, like, the end result or a step closer to the result of what you wanted when you brought in Brett Bielema, man. It felt like a moment. I do want to say, like, as you mentioned, I know, people have pointed out this, like, we've seen fluky wins and we've seen fluky seasons. And I'm not trying to downplay the 2019 win at Michigan State, but like that, there's like a lot of turnover luck involved in that season and that game. And you needed a lot of breaks maybe that you didn't necessarily create all the time. This felt like a sustainable way to win. You dominate in the trenches. You have your massive outside linebacker, defensive end Gabe Akis wreck a game. You have T-Raw Edwards be disruptive. You win on the offensive line that we've frankly criticized for 7 weeks, Jeremy. Like, there's just sustainable moments on this. It wasn't a heave and a prayer that we've seen even at times in Brett Bielema's tenure. It's like, oh boy, that win at Maryland last season, beating Toledo, like, you kind of got lucky. Like, you required some luck on those. And this just felt like a wire to wire. They're just very much in control. And it's something that you could, like, there's no reason you can't do that week over week.
Yeah. Well, here's Brett Bielema talking about the moment tonight.
As a head coach, to know that moment, and more importantly, that our opponents felt that, was a huge, huge deal. So, super respectful of the past. All that goes into it. Nobody honors our former players. It was so awesome today because I know there were a lot of players here. Josh has been telling me about the events and leading into everything. To have them come here and see that crowd and that environment is really pretty awesome.
There was a longer quote of that, but Brett Bielema was basically saying, like, hey, I know we talk about these moments, but let's leave the past in the past. This is what the standard should be moving forward. And now you have, 2 of 3 seasons, Joey, where you're kind of, is it becoming the standard that you can beat these teams and that you can be maybe not middle tier Big Ten, but maybe upper middle tier Big Ten, that you're in the conversation with those Wisconsins and Iowas. You got to keep doing it, right? You got to take advantage of it. You got to see how the season ends, but they're setting themselves up for one of the most successful seasons here. But let's dive into this game, Joey, because I think the concern for everybody after allowing 46 points in the second half to a Purdue team that just got shut out by Oregon. We know how good Oregon is. We'll find that out next week as Illinois takes them on in a top 20 matchup, most likely. But to bounce back. And listen, Michigan's quarterback situation is indefensible. I don't know how a powerhouse program goes into the season with this quarterback situation, because Jack Tuttle was awful for most of this game. Most of his yards came late. He missed Colston Loveland several times, but they don't really have playmakers in that receiving game either. But they have a quarterback problem. Yet still, Joey, to hold Khalil Mullings in check, to Donovan Edwards was a non-factor for the most part in this game, and to force 3 takeaways, something that had been lacking. They had 3 takeaways in this game, only 1 in the previous 3. What a response for Aaron Henry's team. And from talking to everybody afterwards, sounds like they just got back to playing simple, like doing what they do best, which is man coverage, mixing in some zone, and not overthinking this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought Aaron Henry kind of laid the foundation of that on Monday when he talked to us. He said, I had to ask, like, what did we do to get here? And I think they kind of overthought. He pushed back at the word overthink against Purdue, but it felt like they kind of overthought that defensively with a redshirt freshman quarterback that was really late to game plan against. And just be honest, man, like, we didn't really see this kind of bounce back. This was not particularly easy to see after what happened in the second half against Purdue. And you have a Michigan team that comes in here that runs the ball really well, and you don't stop the run well. And like, I guess there's just not a lot of reason to think that it would be this kind of performance. Like, even now I'm looking at Michigan had 322 yards. It feels nowhere near that.
Yeah,
Like,
because a lot of that was late.
It was late, but it still doesn't feel like it was even that high. It was just a total domination by this front. And I'm like, I don't understand how the quarterback situation is what it is.
It's embarrassing for Michigan.
That was terrible. And I was really, frankly, surprised that they didn't at all at any point try to get Alex Orji in there to take advantage of those options that Illinois has just struggled to defend at times this year. Like, that felt like a matchup that Michigan should have exploited against this Illinois defense and see what it could find.
The reason I really struggled to pick this game, and somebody pointed out I'm 4-3 in the predictions. Let me give you a little clue. Those predictions, I don't know crap. I don't know anything when it comes to these. It's fun. It gets you guys into the story, and hopefully you read the rest of the story, because I put a lot of work into that. We break down the game. But I get it. The predictions are fun. And yeah, I've been off. I picked them in Penn State, and I didn't pick them for this one, mostly based on the run defense, Joey. I just thought Michigan would kind of control the pace and keep Illinois' offense off the field, and that Illinois' defense wouldn't have an answer. I was concerned they couldn't have takeaways, but I thought Illinois had a quarterback advantage, which proved true, even though Luke didn't have to go off today, but he made plays with his legs and made some throws. But they also had a coaching advantage. Sherrone Moore looks like a first-time coach, and it feels like he overthought. Like, Illinois, after watching Ryan Brown, I think most Illinois fans were like, why wouldn't Alex Orji be the quarterback in this game? And I thought that played out for this entire time. But kudos to the defense. Talk about keeping it simple. They did. Like, what did we talk about coming into this game? Stack the box, go with your bare front, your 5-man front. They had 2 linebackers in the game as well, and basically had 4 DBs in the game, and said, we're going to play man-to-man coverage, and you try and beat us. And, Jack Tuttle had opportunities. Colston Loveland got open several times down the field, and he couldn't get him. But part of that was due to the defensive line really imposing its will, especially I thought Seth Coleman had a lot of pressure, but Gabe Akis was a man-child. He looked like a guy NFL teams will have on the radar. And T-Rod Edwards, man, kind of an unsung hero this year with his pressure on the interior, and then he was really strong at the point of attack. So shout out to those guys. Those guys made a lot of plays and forced Michigan to pass in key situations, Joe.
Yeah, Michigan came out throwing. They threw on the first play, and frankly, it looked like Caleb Patterson had lost a step in his matchup on the outside, and Tuttle was just nowhere near his receiver. They ran the next play, and they came out and they threw again on 3rd down, and that didn't manifest anything. And you thought, oh my God, if Illinois can make them throw, and not even because they were incomplete, it's just when you watched it, it was like, this isn't really that close right now in terms of this quarterback and the receivers and that chemistry. So you thought, man, if you could force them, as you mentioned during the game, get a negative play, make Michigan have a negative play, and you're set up for success on that drive. And that played out. Illinois forced them into throwing the ball. And we knew the stats were bad. We obviously spend a lot of our time, Jeremy, here on Saturday, so we're not perhaps as dialed in everywhere else in college football. We watch, obviously, throughout the week. It is worse than I thought. It was just horrendous. And Illinois, again, man coverage on the outside and tried to make Jack Tuttle beat them. And he did not come particularly close. Donovan Edwards is interesting. Like, doesn't seem like they have a lot of trust in him between the tackles. That feels like big play or nothing.
He was the guy that scared me. Like, he was the one guy, like him and Colston Loveland, right, that could have explosive plays in this offense because their wide receivers kind of small, quick guys like Samaj Morgan, and I thought Illinois kind of matched up well with them with Xavier Scott and Torrey Cox. Caleb Patterson got beat a couple times, but those were the guys I was concerned about. But Donovan Edwards was a stud as a sophomore, Joey. And then last year in the national championship game, you have 2 touchdowns, 100+ yards. Like, it's amazing that like he's regressed or just hasn't done it. But Khalil Mullings is a tough player. I thought he had a pretty good game, but Illinois was able to keep that in check because Michigan just didn't have any explosive options outside of Loveland making plays.
No, and Loveland, I thought that was a huge matchup coming in with Matthew Bailey. And he's like, Loveland was open. There were times that Tuttle just didn't see him or just missed him with his throw. Loveland could have been a much bigger issue today than he was. And there were even times late when it was 21-7. Illinois had Michigan at 3rd and 10+ twice, and they went to Loveland twice. And you thought it might be too little too late, but that is not something you want to let get cooking there. And I mean, I cannot, I guess I'm still just kind of zooming out. And how many positions today did Illinois have just the talent advantage on the field? Everywhere offensively, but the line, probably line of running back, but they outproduced them.
Illinois' offensive line played better, but I felt bad for Michigan's offensive line because they didn't have much of a chance with their quarterback. I mean, everywhere except tight end, but Tanner Arkin had a good game. But yeah, Colston Loveland's going to be a first-round draft pick. Defensive line, I think Mason Graham was really good today. But as a whole, Illinois' defensive front played better. I thought their linebackers certainly played better, and Will Johnson was banged up in this game, so you didn't get to see him very much. And I thought Michigan's secondary actually played better than I thought they would, but Illinois didn't have to throw it around as much. And then they had the lead, so they didn't want to throw it around as much and attempt fade or anything like that. But that's the thing, Joey. Like, Illinois got inside the Michigan 30 5 times in the first half and only scored 13 points. So 21-7 doesn't even say how dominant it was. Like, this should have been a 27-7 or 30-7, whatever it was. Like, Illinois was just in full control.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because someone asked about the 4th and 1 place. This feels like a good window to talk about that. I didn't hate the call. Like, at that point, you don't know how many times you're going to be there so early in the game. My only issue was, one, you probably should spread Michigan out because your strength is to spread it out. Luke Altmyer went under center. Michigan tightened up its defensive line. Just call a timeout and, just get your bearings back a little bit. Like, in retrospect, yeah, like you would have rather had the points, especially as it got a little bit closer at halftime, 13-7. But in the moment, that felt right. Like, that felt like the exact right decision for Illinois. It's just the execution of it, obviously, and they probably should have regrouped with the timeout.
Yeah, we'll get to the live YouTube questions. Shout out to our live YouTube listeners here. We appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notifications bell while you're here. If you got any of those super chats, we'll get to those. We see some of them up here, so we will definitely get to some of those. I do want to shout out Matthew Bailey. Loveland got loose a couple times, but there's nothing wrong with that every once in a while. But what a performance for him. He had a rough game against Purdue, and he talked about it afterwards, Joey. But I think sometimes we forget with Matthew Bailey because it's his 3rd year here. This is his 1st year as a starter. Like, he is now going through the growing pains of being a first-year starter and covering really good tight ends. I thought he played pretty well against Tyler Warren, who looks like a man-child against everybody else, but he struggled against Max Clare. But I thought he did his job against Colston Loveland. At one play, Loveland made a phenomenal catch on that 3rd and 18, was it? But the play before it was right on him in coverage, forced that long 3rd down. And then the play after giving up the catch to Loveland comes back with interception. Also with that great punch on Donovan Edwards for that fumble. These are the kind of plays that show growth, right? That he is growing as a player, still going through that process of getting it nailed down. But these are the type of plays you want from that strong safety and that you've been lacking a little bit. But to have another guy who get takeaways along with Miles Scott would be huge.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually, early in the season when Matthew Bailey was doing all that pre-snap, I called Sidney Brown and we were talking about Matthew Bailey, and that's obviously been the fun comparison since Matthew Bailey got here, right, was those two. And he said, hey, he missed all of last season effectively. So if he hadn't done that, I think we would be talking about him this year like I had in 2022, where that position, Kendall Smith had all those interceptions the year before that, Kirby Joseph, but Sidney Brown was a heck of a playmaker at that position. We saw that it lacked last year, but I just thought it was good perspective from Sidney Brown to kind of like that position is a really unique position in terms of what they're asked to do. And you've just got to go through it. You've got to kind of figure your way through those snaps early in your career. And he's still a relatively young player. And you and I thought there was a lot there, and we still think there's a lot there with him. The coaching staff was really excited about him. I think it's a good reminder sometimes when you hear all of that, you have all these ideas in your head that he can, do this after his freshman year, to remember how valuable those snaps are, especially at some of those key positions where that is a really mental, like obviously he's physical against the tight ends, right? But like that's a very mentally deep position. Like you've got to know a lot of different things, and the best you can do at that position is when you're able to kind of flaunt your mental knowledge out there and move around and make those plays. And like you're starting to see that come with Matthew Bailey as he gets these more reps.
The other thing about Matt, this is the kind of team he was built to defend, right? Like he is a physical in the box safety. I know some people talk about, should he bulk up and be a linebacker? Well, this is why, like you think of the Big Ten teams, like if Illinois plays Iowa, that's a team that he can really succeed against. So I think he's shown his value here. I mean, he leads the team in tackles this season, 49. He is a physical guy in run support. But let's get to Gabe Backus, man, because it felt like they needed this type of game from him, right? Like he had been having a good year, but they needed him to like really take over a game at times. And today was that, Joey. 13 tackles, 2.5 sacks. He's now up to 5.5 on the season. Now 3 forced fumbles after this one as well. This is a game wrecker. This is a game changer. This felt like the moment we've been waiting for Gabe Backus to have, over the last couple of years here.
The moment that was kind of presented to us before the season. Brett Bielema takes him to media days and proudly says, hey, I don't know if we're going to have a chance to bring him here next year. And I did think throughout the course of those first 6 games, it's not like he played terribly. There were moments, obviously, again, the option at the quarterback. I still can't believe Michigan didn't try to exploit that. But he got pressures. And people rightly pointed out, like, pressures are great, but you got to get home at some point. I do think pressure and generating those is really valuable, but he got home today. And you look at, I'm looking at his stats now. He had 8 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a sack against Penn State. He's come up in some of these big games against these big offensive linemen. And this one, obviously, is a physically impressive guy. But he had said he watched a ton of tape on the Michigan tackles this week, and he found ways to exploit them with his skill set. And it wasn't just a matter of being big and quick and strong and all those things that Gabe Backus is. Like, he really kind of felt like he sounded like he toyed with them or found these windows that he could have success, and he just dominated drives, man. Like, that was the performance we thought these outside linebackers would have maybe a little bit more consistently, but they needed to have in a big game to knock off Michigan, a team that could do so much in the trenches. And he came up in a huge moment, and that whole defensive front, I know we'll get into them, man, but Gabe Backus was really, really good. He looked like a guy who might have a decision to make, Jeremy, here in a few months.
Yeah, you get that 8, 9 sack, 10 sack kind of mark. Yeah, you can start having those conversations. So kudos to Gabe, because he did look like a future NFL player today. And he's got that versatility that NFL teams are really going to like. T.Y. Edwards continues to have a great year. But to get 2 sacks from that nose tackle position is not easy. But you talk about get home. And those guys combined, along with everybody else, Joey, they spooked Jack Tuttle. Like there were times
he jumped at one point. He literally was in the air after he got the snap at one point. Why are you jumping?
Yeah,
he was scared. Like, that defensive front was all over him early, and they were in his head.
And it forced him to miss some open throws. There was one beautifully called up wheel route for Colston Loveland, wide open, and he missed it because there was pressure in his face, and he just didn't pull it. He just didn't throw it, and it was he had some time in the pocket, but he was just so spooked by it. He was focused more on moving than throwing the pass and getting hit again. So a great pass rush leads you to takeaways too, right? You get a forced fumble by Gabe, I believe it was, when he got flushed out of the pocket, and then Matthew Bailey with a pick. Miles Scott should have had a pick, but Caleb Patterson had most aggressive hold I've seen. So it should have been called back, but the defense finally got back to its takeaways, and that's where this group thrives. If you can get pressure, man, you're going to get some takeaways, and that changes games.
Yeah, and it's what we had noticeably had seen Illinois missing for the last couple of weeks is those takeaways. We talked about it earlier in the week, is how much, where is Illinois in the sense of being a much better defense versus being really overly reliant on takeaways in those 3 games. I think you're kind of seeing that they're definitely better. There's no doubt there, but they're really, really good when they can get 1 or 2 of those takeaways. And Malachi Hood, we should talk about this before we move on. A fumble recovery, it seems to me like they are open to ideas at weak side linebacker to have Malachi Hood out there in that moment. And it came up really big. Had a torn Achilles last season, but was ready for that moment and got a big forced fumble. But that's kind of an interesting subplot moving forward, is to see him get those reps, because I think his athleticism, his speed, all of those things are kind of what you would like there. And to get him out there now, it tells me that maybe that could be a work in progress there.
We saw James Kreutz get a pressure at some point today. We saw Joe Barna play a lot of reps today. Ezekiel Holmes got the start on the defensive line. I liked getting an older, maybe more physical guy, more stout guy against a team that's going to run the ball a lot. So a lot of depth kind of showed up at points today. And Zeke Holmes also had the blocked field goal, which we got to bring up special teams. What a call. What a ballsy call by Brett Bielema. I mean, you're at the 48, your own 48, 4th down, but man, it felt like Michigan, like if you would have scored on that drive, Michigan might be out of this game. And I felt Brett felt that as well, right? It's 13-7. You had gotten a stop from them on their first drive of the second half. And that felt big because Michigan had a chance to take the lead right after trying to double dip there. So it felt like a big moment, and they got aggressive. And if it didn't work, it certainly could have come back and really bit them. But I like that you're willing to do that in a big game with a team that's not really looking like it's going to score a lot of points on you. But what great execution from everybody on that. Tanner Arkin, of course, gets the flowers for the 36-yard run, some toughness there. But Hugh Robertson had a great sell on a bad snap. And
Academy Award winner.
The blocking up front was phenomenal. TJ McMillan, I believe Lane Hansen had a knockdown
Lane Hansen
block.
was downfield. Henry Boyer was another guy on that shield that opened the door for Tanner Arkin. And Brett Bielema said they had thought about showing that at Penn State. In retrospect, pretty good time to show it. And I asked Tanner Arkin, I said, did you have a sense that this week that was on the way? He goes, I thought if we were going to show it at all, it was going to be against Michigan. So, yeah, I kind of thought that could be coming. We should say, I thought that was Robbie Disher's call during the game. Turns out punch shield is Brett Bielema's pride and joy on the football field. A very football nerd thing for Brett Bielema to get his fix in.
Feels like because he's such a football guy, right? Like the fact that he can have the one thing that he coaches be the punch shield, which is the guys in front of the blockers. I bet he played it. I bet he played punch shield when he was at Iowa. And it's just a small detail that Brett Bielema, he loves those little details of the game and what they do to win. So he shouted out those guys on the punch shield, including TJ McMillan, we learned, has the in-helmet communication on the punch.
We had heard, we had heard in the summer as they were trying to prep for this in-helmet communication that Robbie Disher had kind of crowdsourced around to see if specialists had the in-helmet communication, and largely was looked at like he was kind of nuts for that, which is the most Robbie Disher moment of all time. This man loves special teams. So I got a kick out of the fact that TJ McMillan in-helmet communication, just that's very Brett Bielema. That's just a very Brett Bielema ordeal that they had there. But in a much more real sense, that was a nervy call. I mean, Michigan probably wouldn't have gotten the ball in great field position had that not gone through. It would have been near midfield, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, look what they did offensively. They could have run for 50, but I don't think you had a lot of hope that they were going to do much more. But that just flipped it. That kind of gave Illinois that you go up 2 scores and you just feel like that's insurmountable for what Michigan wasn't not able to do offensively. And is this our segue to talk about Donovan Leary's hair?
Yes, but hold on. I just think special teams had a great game. David Milano, 2 of 3. The one was blocked from 44 yards. Had a low trajectory. It looked like the snap wasn't the best. So that was the one flaw of it. But I thought, and Hugh Robertson's a really good punter. 4 punts, 3 of them pinned inside the 20. And against this Michigan team, that battle of field position is so important. So he had 46 and a half yards per attempt. He's had a really good season. Like when I'm thinking all Big Ten, he might be under consideration for punters. Like just his accuracy, his consistency, his leg has gotten way better. So I want to shout out him. But yeah, we even get a Donovan Leary 2-point conversion after Luke Altmyer puts his head down, gets into the end zone for that rush. He has to come out because his helmet is off. The poise, going through the progressions in the pocket against Michigan, and a great dart to Zachary Franklin, who had a great catch in the back of the end zone. So that's a good sign in a big moment to go up 2 touchdowns against Michigan.
Yeah, one more special teams note. Caleb Griffin correctly pointed out on Twitter that Hugh Robertson, he of 30 years old, wore those jerseys in high school. Yeah. Hugh Robertson, very old.
He remembers Red Ridge wearing.
Yeah, teammates. They were teammates at one point. But that was a really, I say nervy again, because you kind of put that whole picture together from the fake punt. After Luke Altmyer had to come out, you thought, dude, just kick it. Just take the extra point. And ultimately, it doesn't move the needle all that much to go up 20-7 versus 19-7. But that is a lot of trust in Donovan Leary to send him out there in that moment with a chance to go up 2 touchdowns. And he threw a dart. I mean, that was a really good throw and an incredible catch by Zachary Franklin to get his foot in bounds at really the very last second to corral that ball.
I mean, we know Donovan can throw it, like, and spin it a little bit, but like for me, it was just the poise in the pocket, just to sit in that pocket and like, nope, that's not open. Like, everyone's going crazy on Twitter, Joey, because we have a Bears quarterback who actually looks at his progressions. We've never seen this before. That's impressive for a guy who's never really taking a meaningful snap, right? Like this was the most meaningful snap playing time he's ever had in this 2-point conversion against Michigan.
Yeah, it was. And again, like that's a lot of trust from Brett Bielema and Barry Lunny to say, whatever, this was our plan. We know Donovan Leary can make this throw. I thought Brett Bielema made a good point, and you also just did. But I thought it was meaningful that Brett Bielema said on his second read to make sure it kind of paints a picture that this wasn't just a see guy throw ball like on your very first read and don't think. He had to be patient with that to show that poise that you mentioned. That was not on my bingo board today, Jeremy. And I really, again, in the moment, I thought like going for that in the moment was more egregious to me than going for it on 4th down. Yeah. You just had 2 totally different outcomes in terms of how they worked or didn't work.
By the way, number 5 Georgia currently leads Texas 20-0 with 3.5 minutes left in the second quarter. Oregon could be the number 1 team in the country next week, Joey.
Yeah. I mean, I know we'll get into that because I think it's very similar to a conversation we had earlier this week, but it's going to be a top 20 matchup. I expect Illinois, people are talking about now, they should move into the top 20 after today, and top 20 matchup in Oregon on CBS again. Talk about like, I don't want to say rival moments, but really seeing this program roll forward and turn those wheels. Back-to-back CBS top 20 matchup in Eugene. That's the moment.
Yeah, I'm looking at the other scores. Not a lot of top 25 teams losing, so I don't know how much, but I would imagine they rise, right? Just because they beat another top 25 team. But it could be a modest one, even though you beat Michigan. It might be like 20 because there's not a lot of other teams that are moving down. So I just think it's worth mentioning. All right, let's get to some of these super chats and some of your questions. We'll get to those. If you want to send those super chats this way, we always appreciate that. Start with our boy Def. Thought we were going to lose coming in today and didn't think we would be close. So happy to be so terribly wrong. I thought they had a chance, Joey, but I didn't think they were going to win like this. That's why I think this is so encouraging. Is you won in the trenches today against Michigan, a program that obviously is going through a lot of change with coaches and has a terrible quarterback situation. But I thought you were the more physical team, and there's nothing Bart Miller, Terrence Jamison, Clint Sinham, all those guys are going to love more than that you looked like the more physical team in the trenches.
For the first time really this season against, I guess I shouldn't say that.
Nebraska you did.
Nebraska comes to mind, but we just haven't seen the consistency from like you've seen drive to drive, maybe quarter to quarter, but this was just start to finish. Luke Altmyer was not under all that much pressure. He had time back in the pocket. We've talked about the running game, that defensive front against the Michigan offensive line. It's funny. was thinking about this during the week, and we're talking to Clint Senham and Terrence Jamison and Bart Miller and offensive and defensive linemen, and the way it was kind of presented, and that's on us. I recognize that in the way we ask questions. We were kind of posing it like a David and Goliath, right? Like the way, like, boy, these Michigan guys, oh my God, that defensive front, it's good. It's very, very good. But it was kind of like, how is this ragtag group of kids going to be? Like, that's just kind of the way it felt. Like, looking back and listening back, that's kind of how we did that. And
you just got beat by Purdue in the trenches, right?
That's
Purdue
right.
beat you in the trenches.
Like, the questions, it made sense to kind of look at it in that way. But if you look back at it, and we talked about it, it's not like that was the biggest story to me, was can you contain the Michigan run game? And I think prevailing thought was like, no, they're not going to. And they did. And I understand Michigan still ran for 114 yards, but that's containing Michigan in the run game. They didn't give up too many big plays. It's just the way it was kind of discussed all week felt like, yeah, good luck out there, kids. Try to stay strong in the trenches. And Illinois, it's on, like, again, that's not a knock at anyone. It's just how
one of the worst rushing offenses and one of the worst rushing defenses. I think they were fair.
It made sense. It 100% made sense, but it just didn't play out like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why it was so surprising, and I think so encouraging. Happy Hermit. After this one, we can go to Oregon playing with house money, nothing to lose, everything to gain. Go Illini. Happy Hermit. That's what we said about Penn State. You get another chance at it, right? Like, nothing to lose, everything to gain, because right now Illinois goes into its final 5 games, Joey. They're going to be a favorite in 4 of them because Rutgers is not very good anymore. Like, I think we've got enough sample size of them that they are not very good. Minnesota's a solid football team. You got to play well to beat them. You can't just play a bad game and beat them. Michigan State's got some talent. I think you're better than them. Northwestern's not very good. So Illinois made a bowl. I think 4 to me seems like an 8-win team. But now you're actually setting yourself up, Joey, to where you actually are in college football playoff contention. You are in the hunt, right? Like, going into the NFL graphic, you are in the hunt for the college football playoff. Still got a lot of work to do that. If you beat Oregon, you are certainly in there. Now, that's going to be the biggest test of the year for me. But, man, you got nothing to lose. And if you get into a competitive game, you got a quarterback that gives you a chance. And now maybe your defense has a little bit of confidence coming after this game.
You have 2 nothing to lose games in a season, and you can still really make some noise. Like, nothing to lose games at Illinois used to be like, hey, you're going to be 4-8, you're going to be 5-7. What's it matter? And now you say that, and you can still see a path to 8 or more wins. And again, like, you go to Oregon, you lose to what could be the number 1 team in the country. No one's really going to judge you too harshly.
You could get a win on your resume without even winning the game. Like, if it's a competitive game, like, and I'm not saying that's what Illinois is going for, but like, these are the conversations we can have. If they win 4 more games, they're going to be in that conversation. Like Indiana is going to be in that conversation. I personally think Iowa is going to get back into that conversation, but that's fun to think about. Like, that's what beating these teams, even if maybe at the end of the year they're not top 25 teams, that's what beating these teams does, and being in that upper middle tier right now of the Big Ten. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, like, you can hear a conversation now on the college football playoff ranking that when they unveil those for the first time in about a month, I think it's after the Minnesota game, if I'm not mistaken, where the conversation is, hey, Illinois got wins over X, Y, and Z. Their 2 losses are to Penn State and Oregon, and those 2 teams are in the top 4 or 5. Yeah. No one is going to scoff at that. And now you would be best served to not go get blown out in Oregon. Like, that's not going to be helpful, but you can lose that game and come back and feel okay and have a bunch of people here for the Minnesota game and a chance to get to 7 wins. I do want to bring up, and you said this earlier, bowl eligibility is the furthest footnote from our conversation. That's like, just zoom out for a minute, because that is how you see, like, okay, there's steps being taken forward. You think back to, I'm not trying to throw shade on the 2019 or Lovey, but like, he comes in with the bowling ball and everyone's rah-rah. And in that moment, it was huge to go bowling. It was. And you go back to 2022, I don't even remember who they beat for bowl eligibility that year, but it was a story.
It was Minnesota, right? Because they beat Wisconsin, Iowa. Was it Minnesota then? And Nebraska was in there somewhere. So I think it was Nebraska or Minnesota, one of those 2.
Yeah, and that was a big deal. Like, hey, Brett Bielema's got this team bowling. We are 40 minutes into this, and we've only just mentioned it in passing. And that, I think, when Brett Bielema talks about that quote you played earlier, like we don't want to hear about things, that haven't been done here. It's not only just reframing the thinking inside the Smith Center of, hey guys, 6 wins, woohoo! Like we'll see you at the, Car Show Forever Bowl or whatever, horrible around
See in
Christmas
Detroit.
bowl game. Yeah, it's hey, you're also reframing how fans who have been scorned and have been hurt and beaten down by a program that's not giving them a lot of reason, kind of reframing how they should expect this program to be moving forward. And then as soon as that conversation really starts to shift, then you can feel perception, not just in the state of Illinois, beyond that, you can feel that starting to change about this program.
Yeah, speaking of wrong predictions, I had this team winning 6 games all year. I think that was like optimistic, right? Like that was like, hey, that's a good season. That's a bounce back season. You reestablish yourselves. Now you're raising the bar. That bowl eligibility, that's cool. But like once they started 4-0, it was like, oh, this has got to be more than that. You're raising the bar within the season, and then you're raising the bar what your program should be. And I mentioned it earlier, and somebody took umbrage to it. PSU Jim, Jeremy's wrong. Right now, you are better than Wisconsin and Iowa. Listen, I think Iowa's still a very good program. I do think this season you're better than Wisconsin. I do think the last 3 seasons, like you're at least on par with them, maybe better than them, Joey. Like I think you're 1-1 in those seasons, but like that's where you are right now in the Big Ten. Is fans could argue back and forth about, yeah, we're better than Wisconsin right now. Yeah, the season certainly are. I kind of like where they're at right now. Still think Iowa's pretty dang good. And I think they're going to get to 9-10 wins here, but that's where you are. You're not sitting there talking about you with Purdue, Maryland right now, like some programs like that are really struggling. So that's a fun conversation to have, that you can get mad that I said you're at Wisconsin's level.
Yeah, people are talking about where you rank in the Big Ten hierarchy and not the get your butt kicked every week part that we've seen this program like that. Yeah, people are like kind of taking some, wait a second, that's not right. It's not where this program has been. Oh God, oh, he's back. It's so embarrassing.
All right, Illini edge. Illini backup quarterback comes in for one play, throws a strike. Got to be careful he doesn't get stolen. You think there's a lot of teams out there, Joey, that saw that one pass by Donovan Leary and go, yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, maybe the team across the sideline from Illinois.
I think Donovan would have given a better chance today.
I mean, someone had texted me and said, I feel bad even sharing this. They said, who would you take right now, Matt Robinson or Jack Tuttle? The answer is Tuttle. But like
I tell you, I'd take Brandon Peters over Jack Tuttle.
Easily. And they said, man, imagine what Brandon would have thought if he had this quarterback room when he was at Michigan.
And speaking of Brandon Peters, like he was under Jim Harbaugh, right? Was like the 3rd or 4th quarterback at that time.
Yeah, I don't understand how that happens, but here's let's talk about this realistically with Donovan Leary. And I understand that like quarterback carousels happen. I'm not trying to project anything in the future, but there's going to be an inflection point this offseason with Luke Altmyer's decision of what it means, big picture, for that Illinois quarterback room. But that's a pretty good moment for Donovan Leary to have. And I'm sure if Michigan could have said, hey, why don't you just come over here? You should probably figure it out. Just slide over here at halftime or to start the 4th quarter. They would have done that.
Yeah. No, and for Donovan, he's one snap away from being a Big Ten starting quarterback, right? Like you still might need that throughout the rest of the season, right? By the way, Luke, can you learn some slip and slide technique? He took a couple hits that made me nervous in that first half. Like he needs to protect himself. Like he took a few shots to the head, including that touchdown.
It was one, like, I'm guessing it was a slide attempt, but it had all the grace of like a bowling ball off a high dive in an empty pool. Like,
and I appreciate my quarterback trying to block. I really don't want him to. When he tried to block for Pat Bryant, he got smoked.
I know you're apparently a Bears fan. You've made mention a time or two.
They
might have to, Brett Bielema and Barry Loney might have to get the old slip and slide out and let Luke Altmyer, slip and slide his way through campus, because some of those, like, you don't have to make it like this. Just go down, man. You are so valuable to this team right now, and really to this university right now.
Oh yeah, very valuable. And he will probably learn that in the offseason with what Illinois throws his way. We had to talk about Luke Altmyer. 9 of 18, 80 yards, touchdown. Didn't think he was on point with his passes all that much today. Michigan had something to do with that with their defensive line. but the plays he made with his legs were huge. And he obviously was the better quarterback today, despite not throwing up a bunch of numbers here, Joey. So it was nice that he didn't have to carry them to a victory today.
If you would have said Luke Altmyer is going to have 80 yards, you would say, ooh, how quickly did that thing get out of hand for Illinois? And we were joking with some people from Illinois, and I said, it's kind of a weird post game. Like, there's no Pat Bryant, there's no Zachary Franklin. It's not a loss. They said, yeah, imagine having, turns out 4 defensive guys coming out post game, which was really telling. But yeah, Luke,
by the way, there should have been an offensive lineman out there, man. They had their best game of the year.
I would imagine.
Shout out to that offensive line.
I would imagine Josh Cruz was walking off the field, and I kind of looked at him and goes, "This is awesome." Yeah, emotion from Josh Cruz. I would imagine he is going to trot out proudly in front of a camera sometime this week, or maybe J.C. Davis would be that guy. I would like to talk to Brandon Henderson more.
We can give Bart Miller a break this week. I don't know if we need to talk to Bart Miller, or should we?
I like talking to Bart.
Great. Yeah.
I like talking to Bart. He usually keeps it pretty real and lets us know how everything's going. But yeah, man, that was a heck of a performance by that offensive line that has been challenged. They've certainly not only from people on the outside, but when you're playing guard carousel in there, like there's challenges happening inside of that room in terms of who's going to finally grab one of these spots and just not give it back to the other guy. So yeah, man, that against that defensive front, which again is really, really good. And there's first round draft picks on that. That was a heck of a good performance.
All right, just a couple more and we'll get out of here. Jen, great question. Open up the recruiting conversation. Who's the most offered recruit Bielema was referring to in his post-game presser? I think they were talking, he was probably alluding to Alex Graham, who is a 4-star class of 2025. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Joey, but he was saying, Alex is committed to Colorado. He's considering Michigan. I think Michigan probably came into here as his leader, even though he's committed to Colorado because he's from Detroit. Corey Parker's gotten Illinois. They've gotten kind of a late push in here. Obviously have a good DB cell. Today probably helps with their recruiting efforts with Alex Graham, as he and his whole family were basically here. But there also were a lot of very talented 2026 kids, including J.C. Anderson and Max Sutter out of Central Illinois tight ends, 4-star prospects.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to go back and listen. I just kind of interpreted it as like very broadly. There were a lot of very high profile recruits on campus. The 3 you mentioned obviously are probably really high up there. They had quarterbacks in the house, they had some offensive linemen, I mean, these last 2 games, Purdue and Michigan, they have really go back to Kansas. I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to bring this up. Brett Bielema, not really Purdue. Like, you expected to beat Purdue. You probably didn't expect it to be as close as it was. These big games, they've just said, all right, bring them in. Like, there's some confidence there to push your chips in. You don't play video games, Jeremy. I think you still, maybe your Atari went out, I'm guessing. But in NCAA 25, you can host people on official visits. But if you lose, it's like, oh, this is terrible. Like, it hurts your recruiting.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like, if I'm playing my friends, like, oh, I'm not bringing a kid in here. God forbid I lose this game. And like, and it's not the same, obviously. But these guys saying, hey, come into this. Like, we'll hold up our end. The fans are here. It's sold out. We'll give you guys something to really consider. Like that, you did. And once again, we said it after Kansas, you push your chips in on your recruiting visitors, and then you had high-profile kids.
It is a Nintendo 64, by the way.
Ooh.
Just to correct you.
Oh, GoldenEye?
GoldenEye, Mario Kart Racing. I think I had Diddy Kong Racing back.
Oh, Diddy Kong Racing was it. That was
Super Smash Brothers.
Much better than Mario Kart. But no one wants to admit that.
Phenomenal console, by the way, back in the day. No, but this has been, I've covered this for a while now, right? Like, and I wanted to mention this before, like, Illini Inquirer, we started in 2016. This is their 3rd bowl season, right? And I've been covering this team really in depth since 2012. Their 4th bowl season since then. And the fact that it's just kind of like, oh yeah, they made a bowl today. Like, that's kind of huge for this program. But what also is huge for this program is this is the best collection of visitors in a season by far that Illinois has had. The quality of prospect they are getting on campus here is huge. And that needs to start paying off. And Brett Bielema even said, we need to take advantage of this. We have to capitalize on this in recruiting. But to have sold out crowds, to even have 55,000 or whatever it was against Purdue, like, these are actual Big Ten atmospheres. Like Autzen Stadium in Oregon, only holds 60,000. You can have an awesome atmosphere if you're having big games at big moments. Beautiful weather today, by the way, for all of it too. But the excitement that builds, like think of Cameron Wagner out of St. Joseph Ogden. He's one of the top 2027 kids.
Cousin Cameron.
Yeah, Trey Taylor, 2027 quarterback. There's offers from everybody. He was here today. Like, and Illinois is going to have a hard time beating out the LSUs and Ohio States of the world, but maybe that guy thinks about you a little bit more. Maybe you get an official visit and he comes back for that. They're huge moments for the program. And then, oh yeah, fans are getting involved. Fans want to come to these games. Fans might want to get into the collective. Fans might want to, give more money to Illinois football, and that allows you to get some more players too, potentially in the transfer portal or prep. So this is huge for recruiting. I'm interested to see how much they can capitalize both in the class of 2025, but maybe more importantly, Joey, in the transfer portal and future classes like 26 and 27.
Yeah, 26, you're kind of getting into that window. It's still a little early for a commit, but it's not. It's getting later. Like someone. Yeah, this isn't a tease because it's not like
next 2 months somebody will commit. I would imagine.
Yeah, I think you're going to probably see a couple coming up here over the course of the next couple months here. Again, that's not us saying like, hey, be on commit watch, but like this is just kind of how this timeline goes. And when you're doing stuff to make it easier.
Yeah, because like you and I, we see like Sean Bach at our Iowa site reporting on like a class ahead getting commits, right? And it's like, oh, they get early commits over there. Illinois hasn't done that as much, but it's starting to get a little earlier every year. And I do think that class of 2026, some of these guys might want to be a part of it when you get to 9 wins or something like that. And they're like, oh, look what Brett Bielema is doing there.
Yeah, no longer are you having to be like the Kofi Coburn Florida Atlantic cell, where it's, look what we can be with you. We are you away. Now it's, look what we're doing at this position. Here's how we can help you take that step. And you can come in here and make an impact. You can start to – they've always been working ahead in terms of building these relationships, but maybe you can see that pay off in commits before Christmas. And you saw a little bit of that last season. Usually it's been offensive linemen for Brett Bielema here if you're looking at the super early ones. I do – real quick before I know there's a couple more super chats.
Yeah, Happy Hermit. I want to get to this one. He said, Brett Bielema said several recruits are present day. Got any names? We mentioned some of them, but I do want to mention a couple others. A couple in-state kids, linebacker Lesroy Tittle out of Chicago Nazareth, Gene Reardon from Hinsdale Central, Hinsdale guy, big Doug Kramer fan, so loves seeing what he's doing with the Bears after going through Illinois. And there are a couple out-of-stater kids in 2026, linebacker Caden Cobbs out of Texas, and Archie McDaniel. You're starting to wonder, can Archie McDaniel get some traction there in Texas? And DJ Bordeaux, a 2026 quarterback. Illinois has really been focused on Michael Clayton out of Florida, 3-star kid. He's going to be here for the Minnesota game, but they got another kid, DJ Bordeaux out of Georgia. He's a top 400 composite quarterback, Joey. And I know you caught up with him, and we'll have all the reaction from all these guys at Illini Inquirer over the next several days as we get through all this content. But there were some really good players in state and out of state.
Yeah, it's again, they push their chips in, and something like this helps. Like if you're traveling from Florida, from Texas, you would certainly not like to see the team you're like. It would just kind of feel like oh man, I went all the way up there for that. That's not good. The point I want to make, Leon, and I know this is a little off topic, but for the 3 people who care behind the scenes, we'll have our stats pulled up on one tab. We'll split our screen and we'll have the TV copy so we can see some of those replays and at least not sound like fools totally in the moment without rewatching it. And they said playing on CBS was really cool. CBS nailed this from what I saw just in kind of glancing over at that.
How many cameras were you told were here?
I was told there was 30 cameras, pylon, goal line, obviously the sky cam, which got really good shots. You saw drone cams where they zoomed out. And all of these times, like for us, like we're so used to seeing Memorial Stadium basically through like our window from our seats. Then you go to CBS and they zoom out and it's all of this. And it's like, oh, that looks really cool. Illinois got that treatment today.
Yeah.
They got the full CBS. Obviously, it was
and they made the most of it, Joey.
Yes, visually, I thought CBS nailed it. And like we just haven't seen Illinois get that full, pizzazz that CBS had. I just thought that was, I'm glad Leon brought that up because that looked really cool. And it's not something we've seen a ton of.
Shout out to Mark, 1999 super chat. Thank you, Mark. Great showings from all 3 phases. Agreed. Complimentary football, right? Like Luke took care of the ball, which is most important, and got some key first downs. And the defense and the running game did a lot after that. Special teams did a lot after that. He said coaches were prepared with a great game plan and executed really well. Grab a couple beers on your way out. Cheers, go Illini. Barry Lunny, like, you see the tweets. Everyone wants to fire a coordinator like midway through a game. I thought there were some good moments from that. I mean, they got in scoring territory against this Michigan team 5 times in the first half. Just weren't able to execute. There's some play calls, as we talked about, that you can quibble with, but I thought the most important thing was Aaron Henry's bounce back, because even Brett Bielema said Aaron grew over the last week and learned, and he's kept it simple. It felt like Aaron was like, I can get my bag against Purdue. That's kind of my read of it, and we could try some things and not get burned by it. Ryan Walters took advantage of that and exposed that, and just felt like they never kind of adjusted. This week kept it simple, and his guys executed. And Dylan said that was great for us. It was simple, and we just knew exactly what we had to do.
Yeah, and I asked Luke Altmyer, said, frankly, a week ago, you were kind of bailing this thing out in the second half, and said, man, that defense, he's really complimentary. I don't have the exact quote. I don't want to misquote Luke Altmyer. But he's just really complimentary of the defense. The defense, I don't know if I would say they bailed out the offense, but they sure as heck put the offense in some really good situations to not have to go the length of the field to get into David Alano's range or to punch it in to the end zone. It's just a really good performance from Aaron Henry, and his growth and his development. Like, I know a lot of people probably don't always like hearing, like, Aaron will grow, Aaron will get better from this. Brett Bielema believes in Aaron Henry in pretty much every facet of Aaron Henry's life, and he knows Aaron Henry knows football. I think we all agree that Aaron Henry knows football, but Brett Bielema really bought in when he promoted him. My read of it is he bought in on Aaron Henry, the leader and the human, and his trajectory, and knew that the nuances of being a coordinator, not learning football, but the nuances of being a defensive coordinator, you'll figure those out. And maybe it won't always be perfect, but you sure as heck believe in the guy who's standing at the front of those meeting rooms. And more importantly, the guys sitting in those meeting rooms are going to buy in to Aaron Henry. So I understand if maybe people hear like, this isn't like an on-the-job training deal, but there is part of that. It's part of that for any first-time coordinator. I just think Brett Bielema really believed in what he saw, full picture with Aaron Henry, and trusted that he'll keep going on that upward trajectory. And I do think he's on one. I know it's not always linear. Same with this program, but you can see, just like with Illinois, you can see it start to. Aaron Henry knows what works, what doesn't work when you're in charge of the whole defense and not just your position room.
You mentioned we don't get to see a lot of what else is going on during the day. We just kind of check scores every once in a while. I'm sitting there going like, "Oh, Iowa's they could be in the mix here. They're down 19."
I didn't have the heart to tell you. I think I just gonna let the little guy run.
Oh, Maryland's struggling a little bit. They beat USC today, so that tells you like we are so locked in.
We get here like 3 hours before, talk to recruits, do Yeah, and then usually it's like Sunday night, you're like trying to wind down, like, oh, what happened around college football? You get home in time to watch the end of a game. Yeah, I knew the Iowa thing. The Maryland thing was lost on me. I knew it was 12-0. So I think I'm gonna let him ride with this one for a second.
So I checked it. It was 12-7, and then Michigan State scored again. So I totally whiffed on that one. I'm not good at these predictions, guys, if you don't know us. But we cover the heck out of this team. We got a lot of good stuff coming. Joey's got a piece on the defense. I did catch up with Josh Whitman, and you'll want to hear from him about what he had to say about this moment in this game for this team and why he believes so much in this team as well. We got Notebook coming out. We got plenty of recruit reaction coming out of this one, but a huge, huge moment for Illinois to beat Michigan 21-7. First time Illinois beat Michigan in my time covering them, Joey. First time. Did Bob Osmondson say in 40 years they beat them at home?
I think in 2009 they won at home, did they not?
I thought so.
The last win against Michigan was 2009.
You're right.
I believe that was at home.
But yeah, I mean, doesn't happen
a lot.
Doesn't happen very often.
Highlight Leon again. Leon's just crushing it right now. This most recent one.
This one?
Like, we are both like, this isn't a flex. Like, yeah, we're both going to Eugene, but we're going because you people give a damn what we say on here and what we say on the website, which is obviously a big deal, and we appreciate everybody. But like, it means a lot to know that we can send 2 people. You're the publisher. I'm sitting here going on this freaking rant. That we can send 2 people this because people care enough and to know that we do it, we think at a level that benefits and serves the readers. It's really cool to be able to send 2 people to do this and cover the heck out of this team from coast to coast.
Yeah, and that's why we do it. That's why I opened up the travel budgets, because you get to cover these cool games. We've never been to Oregon, so we get to go to Portland and drive down to Eugene. So I'm looking forward to that experience. But yeah, we sent 2 people, and now I'm probably going to Rutgers, Joey. I had not originally planned to go to that, and I will be joining you. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, I guess, if you must.
It's a big game. It could be Illinois going for a 9th win or something like that. So it could be a big moment for Illinois. But the other point is there are a lot of alumni here today. Like Richard was here, Juice was here, 2 guys that when I was at Illinois, were putting Illinois in some big moments and getting some big wins. To have those guys proud of the program, attached to the program, is always a good thing too, right? To have those guys coming back and excited about the program. Howard Griffith was here. And he and his son Houston, I got to share a really big hug after this game. Houston, assistant wide receivers coach for Illinois. So to have those guys part of the program is always great as well.
Yeah, Brandon Lloyd was back as well, and he was part of the Big Ten Network tailgate show. And here's the thing, like Illinois had never really shut the door. Obviously, you would welcome anyone back, but now you're giving them a reason to care and to spend their Saturday and in some cases travel to come here. And I know this game had a lot of build up around it with the 100-year anniversary, but also the product on the field has been pretty good with Brett Bielema as the head coach, and people are seeing that, and there's just a buzz building about Illinois football again.
All right, that'll do it for us. We appreciate all you guys for watching live on YouTube. More than 500 people. I think there was over 600 people at one point. Thank you, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit that notifications bell afterwards. Thanks to all the super chats. You guys make us go. Help us go to places like Oregon and follow this team that will now include a bowl game. So we will see where they go eventually, but Illinois can dream bigger thoughts than just a regular old bowl game, Joey.
A regular old bowl game.
Maybe bigger than Florida, bigger than that with the schedule they got coming up and the opportunity they've set themselves up with. So we got plenty coming up at Illini Inquirer. Sign up now, 50% off VIP membership right now. That'll go through, I think, Monday. So take advantage of that. More than $60 a save. You get all the recruiting updates, all the insight, the Josh Whitman interview, all that stuff coming up on the site coming up. So everybody have a great night. I know you are. And take care of each other. And we'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.